trading Friday morning. Canola was down about $2, with the March contract slipping to $477.10 per ton. Also, early weakness in Chicago Board of Trade soy oil was putting pressure on canola, but gains in soybeans were supportive. A stronger tone in the Canadian dollar on Friday morning was putting pressure on canola. Chicago soybeans were making gains Friday. The March contract was up by 2 cents at $9.06 per bushel. There is a positive note in the markets Friday morning, as trade talks between the U.S. and China will continue next week in Washington, D.C. Although negotiators in Beijing did not come to a final deal to end the U.S.-China trade war, some progress was made on key issues. Despite speculation that U.S. President Donald Trump was set to delay increasing tariffs on Chinese imports by up to 60 days, Trump has now said he is prepared to hike tariffs from 10% to 25% on March 1st. Also, Trump is widely expected to sign the bipartisan deal on providing some funding for a wall along the U.S.-Mexican border. On the same note, the president has indicated he will declare a national emergency and fund the wall to its full amount of $5.7 billion. Corn futures were posting small losses in early trade, with the March contract down by a half cent to $3.74 per bushel. Wheat futures were down Friday morning. The March contract in Chicago was down 5 cents to $5.02 per bushel. The Kansas City March contract was down 7 cents at $4.75 per bushel, and the Minneapolis spring wheat contract was down by a cent at $5.74 per bushel. The canola markets will be closed Friday, February 18th for Louis Riel Day, and in the U.S., markets will be closed Monday for President's Day. That's a look at the ICE futures and U.S. markets for Friday morning, February 15th. In Winnipeg for Markets Farm, I'm Glenn Halleck.
It's never too early to start planning for the upcoming season. Stop by Butler Farm Equipment in Fort St. John during the Kick the Tires event going on now for great in-store deals and finance options on all New Holland equipment. Choose from New Holland tractors, hay and forage equipment, harvesting, seeding, spraying, or construction equipment. But it all ends March 31st, so hurry in and check out the savings during the Kick the Tires event at Butler Farm Equipment in Fort St. John. It's happened to us all. You have a whole list of errands you have to get done. One by one, you get them taken care of, but when you get home, you realize you forgot something. It's minus 30 out, and you sure don't want to go back out. Time Delivery in Fort St. John is there to be your hero. No matter what you need to be picked up, delivered, or couriered, they will take care of it promptly and cheaply. So keep your winter coat in the closet and the boots on the rack. Time Delivery has you covered. For all your store-to-door delivery needs, call Time Delivery, 250-793-8086.
The opinions expressed during this show do not represent those of this station. If you've missed any of this show, you can follow the podcast at Energeticcity.ca. Now, an in-depth look at the news and information shaping our community. This is Trev Talks with your host, Trevor Boland.
Good morning. Welcome to this week's edition of Trev Talks. We are on what is going to be a gorgeous Friday. She's warmed up from the minus 40s that we were talking about last week into about minus 16, 17 as we get ready for High on Ice locally. So if you are looking for events, High on Ice kicks off this evening at 6:30 with the slides and all the events and viewing some of the carvings. And then, of course, the Mayor's Challenge will be tomorrow, at which point in time we'll see if the city of Fort St. John can hold its number one or its winnings from last year as being the best ice carvers. But aside from that, we're joined by Marlon from Fog Dog Energy. And for those of you that checked out kind of the teaser on Facebook, whether it was Energetic or Moose or even my own sites, you've seen the image of a current dirty, landfill being turned into a pristine park. And on the phone with me is Marlon from Fog Dog. Marlon, can you hear me okay?
I can, Trevor. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. So you are currently out of the country. So I really appreciate the fact that you're 8 or 9 hours ahead of our current time, and you've taken the time to jump on the call and fill us in about this groundbreaking technology.
Sure.
So tell us a little bit. I mean, that's why I said I gave them the teaser of kind of a dump turned to a landfill, or a landfill turned to a park. And we know it's not that quick and easy and simple, but that is the concept behind what your company is able to do.
That is correct. What we're able to do is not have the need for landfills. It is not necessary. Technologies are available and it works for the communities. It works for the costs that are involved in operating and creating and shutting down a landfill.
And I love that. And so in Fort St. John, you and I spoke a little bit earlier, and, people know the landfill is on the banks of the Peace River. It's just right out, not far from Site C Dam. And we've got this, pristine property, or what was pristine property. This is the second location of the Fort St. John dump. The other one was, of course, back in the 50s, you just backed your truck up to the hill and threw it over the edge. But it's got me it's got me wondering why more Canadian municipalities are not moving towards a technology like this. So you're able to eliminate the idea of all this garbage being buried. You're able to eliminate the and I mean, even just what is going to happen in 50 years from now when that land is as contaminated as it is with it continuing on. What is the process behind what you guys do? So, and I mean, dumb it down for us. So you literally, the truck goes and still picks it up at the curb.
That is correct. So all of that waste from the municipality comes to our facility. The waste then goes into something we call a converter. And what happens there, it goes through a 7-step process. Depending on size of what we're dealing with, it's anywhere from 8 minutes to 30 minutes. And it's what ends up being created, something we call, it's hydrocarbons, but we call it fluff, for simple words.
Yeah.
It kind of ends up like the dust bunnies that you find under your couch if you don't clean for a while.
I've seen that. I've seen pictures of it, and that's exactly what it looks like.
Yeah. So that's pure hydrocarbons. The material is completely sterile because it goes through a sterilization process. There's no burning. There's no heating. The only two requirements is some electricity and water, and that's it.
Wow. So the 30-minute process would be to do that to how many tons? Like would that be, one garbage route of a city? Would that be the entire week's collection? What are we looking at?
That 30 minutes is about 25 tons.
So 25 tons of everything. And I think that's the key thing too is, with recycling, we're starting to see, 2, 3, 4 years ago when recycling really rolled out heavy in northern municipalities, whether it's Alberta or Fort St. John or BC, wherever it is, it was, you throw it all in the bin, it gets sorted later, it gets dealt with later. And then all of a sudden, glass came out and plastics came out and bags came out, and it's all these things are starting to come back out of it. And what's really got people questioning in Fort St. John is why are we still doing this if it is not an effective service? So what all can you accept or collect from a household?
We can take almost every single type of waste. Certain construction waste, things like big I-beams, big pieces of metal, it would have to go through a little bit of a different process, like a shredding process. But in general, as far as municipal waste is concerned, so you throw away a keyboard, a mouse, your glass, your food, your plastics, all of those regular items, we can process with no sorting.
Wow. And turn all of that into fluff.
That is correct.
I call it fluff, but natural hydrocarbon or whatever you called it. And then, okay, so at home I've got my 2 bins. So the truck would come by. I actually wouldn't probably even need 2 bins because it would all go effectively into one because you can accept everything from a household.
Absolutely. The thing is that, for a lot of communities, they started off with the 1 bin, then they went to a 2 bin. Some have gone to 3 or 4 bin processes. That's just crazy. When you start having to sort all of those items, it becomes cost inefficient.
So now you talk about the 3rd bin. We've looked at a 3rd bin here in Fort St. John, and that was more of a compost side, so grass clippings, that sort of thing. Are you guys able to take that from communities as well?
Anything that's organic, absolutely. Anything that's agricultural, not a problem.
This is amazing. So how long have you guys been, how long has Fog Dog Energy been in business? You guys are in Red Deer. So, here in Fort St. John, we consider Red Deer, part of our backyard because we tie in so closely with, with that Alberta arm of things going, our time zones even match you guys. How long has this concept been around?
Well, the technology's been around for Trevor, and this is, one of the most interesting parts. The technology's been in use for over 20, 25 years.
Wow. So a long time.
Yeah, it's just that it's been heavily used in Europe and other countries outside of North America. The Canada and even the U.S. is about 20, 25 years behind Europe when it comes to waste.
That's incredible. That it's sad, but it's incredible. So you're now recently one of your latest ones are Sylvan Lake. Now, of course, you are waiting for what I'm assuming is provincial approvals, etc. A good friend of ours here at the station, he used to actually call in a lot for one of the shows. Was a general manager, community services. He is now the city manager in Sylvan Lake. You guys have been working on this program. Now, is this one of the first Alberta municipalities to take this on?
That is correct.
So kind of all eyes on Sylvan Lake, all eyes on Fog Dog, for the process. So, and I like that. I like the fact that we're going to be able to get that information quite readily once that starts. I'm hoping that the provincial government will streamline this, because I think, and I'm not going to lie, I've researched you probably more than I research most people or most companies that are on the show, which isn't a bad thing, because the more information I found, the more of a wow factor it was, and it excites me. So I'm not this great big green guy. I'm not a tree hugger. Most of the shows, if somebody went back, that's very relevant that it's not. But when I see something that is this fundamentally changing, not only for current society, but for my kids and their kids, it excites me, and it makes me wonder why this is not becoming the norm. Is it that old, well, we've always done it this way, this is the way we'll always do it? Or is it just the fact that you guys are just starting to ramp up and this is just starting to become such a monster of an initiative?
It's a combination of different things. One is mentality. One of the most common statements that we hear, or under breath, if you will, is, but we have so much land. That's one. The mentality part is also on the acceptance that, well, if this is so good, why hasn't it been here 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Well, that's because you haven't changed.
There needs to be that change first.
Right. And also you have other technologies that have tried to kind of, either invent a new wheel or reinvent an existing wheel, and a lot of them have failed, and that also creates a certain stigma in the industry, because municipalities, they definitely want to make sure that what they're getting involved in is good, it's going to work, and it's not going to backfire on them. So also those things have also affected the industry as well. And on top of that, the government as well. I don't know how to say this nicely.
Don't worry, we don't say anything nicely on this show.
Yeah, the government, both provincially, federally, especially, are also. I can only say that really they don't care,
and that just blows my mind.
Yeah, if the big thing right now is talking about climate change and having a climate tax, etc. Landfills in Canada contribute to over 25 to 30% of the GHGs in Canada.
Wow.
The most important thing in those GHGs is methane. Methane is 20 times more potent than CO2.
Okay.
Right. So why are we picking on the oil and gas constantly? There's already parameters put in place. Alberta already does a very good job worldwide in how it does its production.
Agreed.
But yet everything keeps coming at them. But yet there's no programs. They say that they have these renewable programs and energy. I could tell you this, as far as we're concerned, what program? Yeah. Because the parameters that they put in doesn't work for most organizations that are trying to actually have something and can actually make a change. The programs don't apply to them.
That's incredible. So, and I love the fact that you brought that up, because now it's got me thinking about, BC for an example, and I know Alberta does as well, and all the provinces do, but, we've got our premiers that are committing to all these GHG reductions, and in thinking that they're doing that, they're trying to limit pipelines, and they're trying to limit, fracking or natural resource exploration and the sale of, and if they would literally look in their own backyards, and especially when it comes comes to, say, the Lower Mainland, where, Vancouver now ships a large amount of its garbage north, they would actually be reducing GHGs faster and more effective than they would by trying to limit energy resources.
That is correct.
That is unbelievable. So have you spoken with, have you given a presentation? I know I've been a city councillor for a long time, and part of that is, getting presentations or receiving presentations on groundbreaking technology or technology like this, also groundbreaking, from constituents or from businesses in the province. Has Rachel Notley or the NDP government, because they were hardcore in their pre-election or 4 years ago before the term was started in reducing GHGs and getting with this. Have they called on you to be able to do this, or was it Sylvan Lake that called on you to be able to do this?
You know what? For Sylvan Lake, they have a fantastic council, a forward-thinking mayor and council that realized that a change has to be made, and we went through one hell of a vetting process with Sylvan, so they got the comfort to move forward. So it was comfort position for them at that point. Okay, let's do this. When it comes to government, NDP or Liberal, it doesn't really matter. They have been completely useless.
Wow, that's not only sad; it's unfortunate. So to me, again, going back with my teasers of the picture of a dump with 150 years worth of garbage being pushed around and buried, and then of course the park, and so listeners know, if you're listening to us live or if you're catching us later on the podcast, YouTube or Facebook, that picture of that park is actually a former dump. So again, did a little bit of research. So with our dump in Fort St. John, so our dump has been there for say 50 years right now. There is a lot of buried process. There's a lot of buried material. What can you do with what's currently existing there? Is there any way to clean that up and put that through the process as well? Or is it kind of we're starting this process January 1st, 2020 forward, and that's all that matters?
So the answer to the question is yes. There is technology where we can reclaim existing landfills. What ends up happening, it becomes two parts. One, depending on who's financing it or who's paying for it, they end up looking at it as, well, what are we going to get on the output, right? And the other side is that we don't care about what we get on the output, because the main mission here is to reclaim that land. Yeah. Right. So to answer the question again, yes, there is technology that we have that can reclaim existing landfills. And since we're on that topic of 150-year-old landfill, the things that we thought that would take 2 months or 5 years to decompose have been completely wrong. Okay, I'll give you one example. About 5 to 10 years ago, they used to say that a normal newspaper, not nothing special, just normal newspaper, they used to say would take about 7 weeks. Then that changed into 5 to 10 months. Now they say about 1 to 2 years.
Wow.
But the truth is, there was a dig that was done on a very old landfill in 2018, and they found a newspaper with perfect print. You can still read it, and this was from 50 years ago.
So they have no idea what the decomposition rate is, that what we've been told.
Correct.
So not only is that more reason to start looking forward to, to something that you guys do. And I guess that's what just kind of blows my mind, is the fact that we now have this technology and it is proven in other countries, like you said, for 20 to 25 years of use. And here we are in Canada, a little bit behind the 8 ball, but part of that is because our politicians, if you will, our governing bodies, our powers that be, won't understand or won't accept the concept that it's time to make a change.
Correct, but but they constantly want to use the fancy words that make them think they're doing something, such as climate change. But in reality, as far as I'm concerned, and what I have seen, it doesn't do anything. The whole tax program as well, it doesn't solve any problems.
No, it doesn't. It's a money grab.
Correct.
Which is unfortunate. So with Sylvan Lake, for an example, and I mean, we don't need to get right into absolute numbers, but
Sure.
is it going to cost the city more, less, the same, in order to transition from, the old landfill idea into your guys' new technology? What, and I mean, not them specific, but any community. I mean, is there a burden to the taxpayers, which is always the biggest question, of changing the way it's always been done?
Absolutely does not get more expensive. The costs immediately go down. To give you one quick example, the disposal cost alone can drop by $300,000 a year.
That is unbelievable. So it's going to cost them less money. It's going to be less maintenance. It is going to be beneficial because you're going to get the lands that have been used for so many years as landfills back into a land bank or back into a resource or something that's an absolute benefit, and all the while spending less money.
Correct, and they don't have to spend the money on having to create a new landfill. The average landfill to create is between $3 to $5 million plus. Then you add in the operating cost over that 10 to 15-year lifespan of that landfill, and then you also deal with a cost of anywhere between $3 and $5 million again to shut it down.
Wow!
And then you have the liability that goes with that. And every year, there's been more and more landfill fires because what happens now too is that a lot of batteries from the phones and other type of LiPo and lithium type batteries make its way into the landfill. When those tractors are moving around that waste and pushing them so they can create the layers upon layers upon layers, and that's what they do, the pressure from one of those tractors can be like 50,000 psi. That's enough to pressure on one of those batteries to create a spark to start a fire.
For sure it is, yeah. Which is devastating. I mean, a fire at a landfill, economically and even environmentally, would be absolutely devastating. I don't even know how a person would control that in our existing environment.
You don't. They pretty much let it burn.
Just
for
let it
2
go.
weeks to a month, depending. Yeah.
Which is a scary idea all on its own. So let's get back to the end product, because that was some of the questions that I had received. When we put the show out here yesterday, was so this fluff that you guys can create out of all of our garbage from our household without sorting, without messy or mucky. What does this fluff turn into? Like, what is the use of this, and how useful is it?
Okay, so the same way when we drill for oil and we take that fossil fuel and we then manipulate that fossil fuel into different types of energy and products. It's the same thing with waste. So there's plastics, there's other material, plastics being the primary thing that it goes through a gasification process. In that gasification process, a synthetic gas is created, or we call it a syngas. And then from that syngas, you can direct that syngas into creating things like electricity.
Wow. So you're using garbage to create electricity?
Correct. It can even create liquid fuels.
So, let's take British Columbia for an example. Very, very much a hydroelectric dam, both an exporter and an importer of hydro. Take a community like Sylvan Lake. How much electricity would a year's worth of garbage collection and conversion, what would that turn into?
Okay, so I'll give you an example. Now, for Sylvan Lake, we're not doing energy creation. We're just doing the hydrocarbons.
Yeah.
The next facility that we're building, that's going to actually do the energy generation. But a good example is this. For every 100 tons of waste per day, we can create about 1 megawatt per hour of electricity.
Wow. That's incredible. The fact that we're taking our own garbage, which is something that we have to dispose of anyways, and turning it into something that we use in our everyday lives. Tell me, I mean, you've already told me, but I don't grasp why this isn't a concept throughout Canada. And I get it, and I get the political side of it, because, like I said, I've been a politician for a long time, but I don't get why they're not listening. So on the fuel side, so this fluff can become diesel as well.
That is correct.
So a person could use this fluff, turn it to diesel, which could be used on, road plows, garbage trucks. I mean, whatever's running diesel would be the use of this. So it's this constant cycle we'd be able to create where we waste it, we reproduce it, we reuse it, we waste it, we reproduce it, we reuse it.
That is correct. And in the current process of putting it to a landfill, you're not getting anything from it, of no value. It's just a constant expense and a liability, and it's, again, the GHGs.
Absolutely blows my mind. So we need to, I think what needs to happen is I think the people of Alberta, I think the people of British Columbia need to reach out to their governments, their municipalities, their regional districts, and get more involved and express the fact that this technology is here, it's now, it is life altering, and it's going to be probably one of the most positive changes we can have for GHG reductions, and allow the politicians to stop beating up our already battered oil and gas industry.
Correct.
So are we waiting? You guys have an election coming up in the fall, where there's a very good chance that it's going to be from an NDP government to a Conservative government. Have you reached out to Jason Kenney or any of the MLAs in the area? Like, are they getting up to speed on this at all?
You know what? Again, politics is politics. You start with one, and then it just goes nowhere. When it comes to an election year, they really don't care because they're all focused on getting votes. So we put it like this: we don't depend on them for what we have to do as an organization. We would love to work with them because if the government, both again provincially and federally, can be involved, it can make a much bigger change throughout Canada and a proper focus on GHGs in Canada versus what they're doing.
Agreed 100%. But part of the problem is I think it's become so easy to blame oil and gas, or it's become so easy to blame, the energy resource sector of things as far as being, the big bad pollutants that they take this stance and just leave it from there. And, it's funny because I look at some of the municipalities like, Calgary, for an example. I love Calgary, great city. They're looking at a very significant tax increase where, they could be looking at a very significant environmental change to your guys' way of doing things and reduce these tax incentives or these large taxes that you're going to be passing on to businesses, residents, industry, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And I'm not just picking on Calgary because it's happening in BC as well.
Yeah, again, I don't understand Calgary. I live there. Calgary spent, I think, $130 million on a compost facility.
Yeah.
That facility has a very high operating cost. They also have a non-stop consumables that has to treat that compost that goes along with it. To this day, it blows my mind as to why.
Yeah.
Right.
We will never figure out what politicians think.
Yeah, I never will. Like, I don't know why they're doing it. I don't know why you spend that. You spend $130 million for this?
Yeah.
What is exactly the return back to Calgary? 50 years?
Yeah.
40 years?
Where they could actually switch technologies and have a return immediately in a vast amount of ways, like not only tax savings and not only cost savings, but just strictly the use of it.
Correct. They just look at it as add another bin, let's charge the residents more, and that way it looks as if they've done something, and it doesn't work that way.
No. So now you guys, when you go into a municipality, you build the facility, you build the location. It is your processing plant, and then I'm assuming then the deal is done with the municipality as far as the deal for waste collection, or in BC, for an example, sometimes it's with regional districts.
Yeah, it completely varies. Every municipality is different. So we work with every municipality. Some municipalities, they want to be able to run their own equipment and manage it themselves. We have no problem with that. If it's a facility where we're coming into, we have no problem with that either.
Wow. Okay. I absolutely love that. I think, what we're going to do is we are going to wrap up. I know you are in Egypt. So again, I absolutely appreciate the fact that you've taken the time for this. I love what you guys are doing. I think we need to be, we as residents, we as people of this great nation need to be more focused on ensuring companies like yours are heard of, understood, And again, for BC, Saskatchewan, Alberta, when you're looking at the oil and gas and the promise of GHG reductions and the fact that you're already going to be 20 to 30% reductions with what you guys have in a recycle, reuse, reformat process, this doesn't get any better to me. This needs to start happening now.
Absolutely.
Okay, beautiful. So if they want to check you out, you guys, you've got your Fog Dog Energy on of course, on the internet. Are you on Facebook as well?
No, we're not. We do try to avoid a bit of the social part of things because we want to keep focused on what we do and working with municipalities. And sometimes the social aspect of things can kind of take things sideways.
Yeah, agreed.
So this works best for us right now. As we move forward.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and from my understanding, you're not a huge company either. You are a very focused, growth orientated company out of Red Deer.
Correct.
Yeah, it was funny because when I phoned your office yesterday and the lady answered the phone and I gave her my ramble of who I am and what I want to do, and she says, "Well, I know you." She's like, "I lived in Fort St. John for 15 years. I know exactly who you are." So again, just that tie-in between communities, right? At one point in time, we're all living in these same areas, and they all need to improve and get better.
Absolutely, and it doesn't have to cost more.
No, cost less.
Exactly.
You got to love costing less and actually benefiting the entire planet at the same time. So we're going to let you go. We're going to let you finish on with your evening. People can check you out. We're going to link the video. I've seen a video of what you guys have. We're going to link that on with the show on Facebook and on YouTube as well so that people can get more informed. I want to thank you so very much for taking time to joining us. And literally, we need to, and I'm going to help ensure that our politicians of right now understand that this change is imminent. And, you're right there in Red Deer and it's very easy to access.
Thanks a lot, Trevor.
You bet.
I appreciate the time.
Take care. Have a safe trip home.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, folks, that was another edition of Trev Talks. Very, very, very interesting, very in-depth, very scientific, but it's something that I feel that is a change that all of us need to make. And I think the sooner we make it, the better off we are, not only for, again, those savings, but also, what our kids are going to see, or our grandkids 100 years from now after we're long gone and they're digging up, like you said, newspapers from 50 years ago. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you next week.
You've been listening to Trev Talks, a weekly talk show about Fort St. John and